Good morning, ma. Welcome to Alpha Online Education, Commerce Theory part for the first year's English medium. And the topic which we are dealing with, that is the business finance. This is the second session of the business finance. In the first session, we have discussed about the classification of financial classification of funds. So on the basis of period we have completed. Now we are discussing on the basis of ownership. Okay, on the basis of ownership, the source can be classified into owner's fund and borrowed fund. Okay, on the basis of ownership, the fund is classified into owner's fund and borrowed fund. Owner's fund means the fund which are provided by the owner himself. He is not going to borrow from any outside. Okay, so the owner fund means provided by the owners, which include issue of equity shares, retained earnings. Retained earnings means whatever the profit the business will earn, from that profit they keep a portion of profit as a returned, means they will save a portion of profit. Okay, they will save a portion of profit from their profit. Okay, if they got 100 rupees profit, in that 70 rupees they will distribute to the distributor in the form of a dividend and in the form of loans, and remaining 30 rupees they will save. Okay, for future use, for future expansion or future diversification or for future survivor. Okay, those fund is known as owner's fund, means he will bring that fund. So issue of equity shares, when the shares are issued, that is purchased by the owners. The equity shareholders are the real owners of the business. Okay, equity shareholders evaraithe untaro, they are the real owners of the business. They will also bring the capital, and retained earnings are also a source of finance. Okay, next, borrowed funds refers to the funds raised through loans or borrowing. So borrowing fund means that is borrowed in the form of loan or borrowed from any money lenders. Okay, loans from commercial banks, loan from financial institutions, public deposits, etc. These are borrowed funds. Okay, borrowing from some lenders, borrowing from banks, borrowing from commercial banks, borrowing from private banks, borrowing from financial institutions. These all are considered as the borrowings. Okay, so on the basis of ownership, the funds are classified into two categories. One is owner's fund and one is borrowed fund. Next, on the basis of generation, source of finance can be generated from internal and external source. Internal source of finance are those that are generated within the business. Okay, this is generated within the business. What is that? Retained earnings. Okay, whatever the profit that they got, from that profit they save certain portion of the profit. That profit is called as retained earnings. And collection of receivables, if there is any bills, receivables are there, those receivables are also considered as internal source of finance. And issue of shares, these all are considered as internal source of finance. Okay, so these all are what? Retained earnings, collection of receivables, recovery of the debt. These all are considered as internal source of finance. Next, external source of funds are those which are borrowed from the outside. Okay, that is generated from outside. What are those? By issuing the shares, by issuing debentures, public deposits. These are considered as external source of funds. External source of funds. Let us move on to the factors determining the choice of source of finance. So based on certain factors, the businessman will choose which source of finance is better for him based on certain factors. First one is cost. So the fact of the cost is two types. Okay, the cost is of two types. Cost of procurement of fund. Procurement means the cost of gathering the fund, and the cost of utilizing the funds. The cost of procurement of fund and the cost of utilizing the funds. So procurement means gathering cost and utilizing means using cost. So the cost factor deciding about the source of fund will be utilized by an organization. So the cost factor deciding about the source of fund will be utilized by an organization. So how much fund the organization will be utilized, that is considered. Okay, cost for the procurement of fund, while procuring the fund, while gathering the fund, how much amount of cost they have been used, and cost utilization of fund. So the cost when utilizing the fund, what will be the cost? So these two things are considered. Okay, based on those two things, the businessman come to the final conclusion of choosing the factor, which factor is better. Okay, financial strength and stability of operation. Financial strength. So what are the financial strengths for the business, and what is the stability of its operations? Stability means capacity of the operations. Operations means activities. In the course of in the choice of source of funds for the business should be in a sound financial position. So the business should be, the fund for business should be in a sound position, means they are able to pay the amount what they have borrowed along with the principal amount and the interest also, so as to repay the principal and the interest amount. Whatever they have been borrowed from the outsiders, based on that they should have the capacity to pay the actual amount, that means the principal amount, and the interest for that borrowing. That will be the financial strength and stability of the operation. Based on that, they have to decide which type of sources. These all are sources on the basis of ownership, on the basis of generation, on the basis of predate. Okay, classification of sources of fund we have discussed. Yes, these sources can be decided based on these factors. Okay, forms of organization and legal status. So see, generally in a partnership form, a business can't, the karta can't able to borrow money in the form of issuing the shares. They can't issue the shares, equity shares they can't issue in the partnership form. But in the joint stock company, they can raise the fund by issuing the shares. So here, form of organization, whether it is a partnership, sole proprietorship, cooperative society or joint stock company or whatever it may be, based on that, and legal status, whatever the legal formalities are there. Okay, while gathering the fund, while gathering the source of fund, whatever the legal formalities and which type of organization, in which type of organization you are gathering the fund, you have to be considered. Okay, because for partnership it can't able to rise from the outside, but joint stock companies can rise from the outside, right? Next, fourth one, purpose and time period. For what purpose you want to rise the finance. Okay, for what period of time, whether for a long period of time or medium time period or for short time period, you have to decide. And the purpose of finance, for what purpose you want that fund. Okay, so business should plan according to the time period for which the funds are required. for what period you require the fund. You have to get a clear idea regarding that, and for what period and for what purpose you want that fund. Risk profile. Business should evaluate each of the source of finance in terms of risk involved. So those are the sources of funds. So internal owners fund, borrowed fund on the basis of generation, internal source, external source on the basis of period, long-term fund, long-term finance, short-term finance, medium-term finance we have. So based on that, the borrower should have to decide whatever the risk involved in that. Okay, based on the risk involved in that, what are the terms, conditions are there, he has to consider all those things, and based on that final conclusion he have to choose one of the source of fund. Okay, control. Equity shareholders enjoy voting rights. So if we are raising the fund by issuing shares, then equity shareholders or the owners, they will enjoy the voting rights, they have the control on the business. If we are going to financial institutions without issuing equity shares, we are going to financial institutions, they may take control of the asset or impose conditions as the part of the loan agreement. What they will do, they will control the assets. What are the assets are there in your business, they will control those assets, or they impose certain conditions, they impose certain conditions on the loan agreement. Whatever the loan you are taking, on that they will impose certain type of conditions, and you have to disclose certain documents to them for their satisfaction. So there is much formalities are there. They will control the business. You can't use the assets in the way what you want to use. If for everything you have to consider them, you have to ask them. So these all type of control. అంటే వాళ్ళ మీద ఒక కమాండింగ్ మోడ్ అనేది వచ్చేస్తుంది. వ్యాపారం మీద వీళ్ళది ఒక కమాండింగ్ మోడ్ అనేది వచ్చేస్తుంది. కాబట్టి they have to select the source of fund based on these factors. So based on the comfortable factors, based on the comfortable source, only the businessman should have to select the fund. Okay, next, effect of credit worthiness. Issue of secured debentures. If you are issuing secured debentures, it may affect the interest of the creditors. Okay, it will affect the interest of the creditors. They may not willing to extend further loans to the company. Then the creditors will not come forward. Okay, the creditors will not come forward to provide any loans in the future. Further, they will not going to give any kind of loan to the company, because the company has issued the debentures. Those are secured debentures, unsecured not. Those are secured debentures. So that's why the creditors will not willing to give any further loan to the company. They are completely upset. Flexibility and easy. Certain loans are flexible and very easy to get. Okay, certain things are involved very large amount of formalities. Certain involved large amount of formalities, and certain required less formalities. Based on the flexibility, you have to choose the source of fund. Next, tax benefit. So if you are giving a dividend to the preference shareholder, then the tax is not exempted. Ante tax minhaimpu em undadu. If you are paying the interest to the debentures and the loan, if you are paying the interest on debentures and loans, tax deductible, and may there be preferred by organizations seeking tax advantage. If you are giving dividend to the preference shareholder, then there is no tax deduction for you. If you are paying interest on the loan or debentures, then there is a tax deductible. So majority of the businessmen want to issue these debentures and they want to borrow the loans in order to deduct the tax. Okay, so it is also a type of advantage for them. So based on these factors, we have to select which source of fund is suitable for our business organization. Okay, so the class in the next session, in the third session, we are going to discuss about the classification of source of funds chart and also what is working capital and fixed capital is somewhat in detail. Okay, yes.